which I think you can just click on it. Or you can go, you click the arrow here.
Let me see if I got this.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Matt, that was such a wonderful introduction. And do me a favor, send me those slides for my wife so she thinks I'm somebody. So I have to give a shout out to Matt, who was, and I'm not just saying this because I BS all the time. Matt was one of my favorite fellows. The nicest, most honest, hardworking, straightforward people I've ever met. The nicest guy. I mean, I'm not saying you are. And it was great. There's all different types of fellows. The fellows that come in overconfident, fellows that come in underconfident, the fellows that don't come in when there's a problem. Matt was perfect. You had a problem, you had a phone call at 2:00 in the morning. Matt wouldn't just call the junior resident. He'd come in and see it. So number one, you're the best and I love you. And then Dave's up there, Dave Kirschenbaum. I was residents with Reish and Kirschenbaum. You could just imagine what that was like back in the day. And we had a lot of fun. So I was asked to talk about private equity and I was asked to talk about cervical spine trauma. So there's only one word for private equity today, and that's called American greed. And I want you to think about it when I say American greed, because I know there's people out there, there's not many attendings in the room, but that's not Steve Reish right there, is it? That is Steve Reish, but how come you dress like a doctor? Okay, so anyway, okay, so I say American greed because I went through private equity. And when I tell this story, people get mad at me because people don't like the dirty laundry aired. So we were the first group that went private equity in 1996 and went bankrupt in 1999. And we internally handled it wrong. But I was a young surgeon, so I was in practice. I started in 1993, and it just didn't make any sense to me. And I want every young surgeon out there to say, it just doesn't make any sense to me. What is private equity and how do they work? It's all based on cash flow. So when you get older, you'll understand what a P&L is, a balance sheet, income statement. You'll understand what arbitrage of money is. It's just management of cash flow, and physicians have a high cash flow, and Wall Street loves cash flow because you can arbitrage or lever debt on cash flow. So they take advantage of surgeons and they give you tax preferred money in return for your cash flow. What is tax preferred money? It means I'm going to give you $1 today and you don't have to pay income tax on it. You can pay long-term income tax. So you arbitrage that over time. I give you $1 today. It's really worth $1.50. If I give it to you a week late, you're doing net present value. So you have to have the basic elements of business, and that's all it is. But you'll never have income repair. You ever heard the term income repair? It's a 1980 merger and acquisition. A lot of people went to jail in 1980 for doing this. What they do is they say, we need to scrape your salary 30%. That's my cash flow. And then me, the private equity guy, takes that and I lever that debt in many different ways and I make tons of money on it. And you keep on paying me 30% and I give you a bunch of money and you say, I don't have to pay normal income tax. I pay long-term, so you made a benefit. And then hopefully you'll invest it well. But every year, I want my 30%. The next year, I want my 30%. And you'll never make up that income because the fallacy is they'll do income repair, which never works. So when I talk about, and there's many other ways of playing the Wall Street game back on them, and I'll get into it. I won't get into detail. So the things you have to think about is these mergers and acquisitions are happening around us all the time. Last night I was talking to Rich. He said, I'm thinking about it because every young surgeon who's getting to the age of 50, 60, I'd like to monetize my practice. I'm getting sued more frequently, cutting my reimbursement, Medicare is cutting back, society's not really nice to us. I'd like to get out if I can. So you have to keep that in mind. We're all becoming more specialized, which is interesting. We're becoming more specialized, even the generalists. And in my group, I have 236 orthopedic surgeons at the Rothman Institute. We have 6 generalists, and it's always a headache. What do you do with a generalist? Because in the city of Philadelphia, if something goes wrong, well, you're not a specialist. So we see specialty care is increasing. People are getting more advanced training. We're getting older, which is interesting. I'm 61. The average age is, I think, 56, 57. But people are getting out early. We're going through the mass retirement, as you can see in orthopedics. If you look at the number of years of experience, that is getting greater, which is good. So the people out there have been out there for a long period of time. So you keep that in mind. But if you look at the business of medicine, The most common thing we think about is we have an aged population. Now, if we go to a single payer system or Medicare for all, the world was changing in front of us. Then we'll become employees of either a healthcare system, we'll become like Europe, an employee of an insurance company, or we'll work for the government itself. But these are the things you have to think about when you think about the business of medicine. We're getting older and elderly orthopedic procedures are increasing. I always feel bad for my sports medicine brethren. So you have to look at the natural history of a sports medicine physician. I study every group. I study the hand surgeons, the foot and ankle surgeons, the spine surgeons. Spine surgeons can grow and their patients get older. They have spinal stenosis. If you're a generalist, your patients get older, you can do total joint replacements. My sports medicine surgeons begin to suffer at the age of 56 and older because the younger sports medicine doctors seem to be going to the games, they're in touch with people, and the people who make healthcare decisions, it's the mother. Mom makes decisions for their kids, mom makes decisions for their husband, and mom makes decisions for the parents. And the older sports medicine surgeons really struggle at the Rothman Institute over the age of 55 because their patients now need total joint arthroplasty. So unless you adapt your practice to do total joint arthroplasty, you'll notice after the age of 55 that the practice is going down. So you have to keep that in mind for the business of medicine. Today, 17% of the population 65 or older. 20 years from now, it's going to increase. And guess what? We tend to retire. We see what's happening now in society, and they will not have the funding to continue to support a commercial private practice. You have to keep that in the back of your mind. And this is how business people, they analyze these numbers. Now, the scary thing is Medicare keeps on cutting every year. Last year, 5.4% cut. If you look when I started till now, you're getting paid half the amount of money, and that's Medicare. But reimbursement in general is going down. You're not going to be able to make money doing high volume orthopedic surgery anymore. So you have to become a business person. That doesn't mean operating inappropriately. That doesn't mean screwing patients out of more money. That means setting up your own business, developing passive income lines that are legal, working on the business of medicine. And remember, 74% of you, when you graduate, will work for the man. You'll work for a hospital, you'll work for an academic center, and insurance companies haven't really picked up, but insurance companies are picking up. Kaiser, Intermountain, Geisinger, insurance companies are now hiring people, which will be, because that'll be a vertical system. They'll control everything. So keep that in the back of your mind. You're not making money. So what do you do today? And I'm going to talk about 4 basic things you could do. One is you could say, I'm doing well. I'm going to stay as I am. Last night, there's practices of 6, practices of 8. That's great as long as you have a revenue line. Most contracts are with 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You don't know where it's going to be. If there's a major trend or major upset in the political system and the insurances change, that could be a problem. The nice thing about staying the way you are is you kind of know what you have, what you want to do in the future. And I asked the question last night, how do you decide to bring another partner in? It's interesting. So let me tell you how that works. With 238 doctors, the older guys like myself look at, well, I want to look at the geographic area. I don't want to cannibalize my partners. I want to have a certain amount of coverage, because if you don't have a certain amount of coverage, insurance companies have more leverage. That's how I think. How does a doctor 4 years out think about bringing out another partner? I don't want another person hired until I'm dead. I don't want anyone coming in cannibalizing my practice. I want to be the last spine guy hired. So I have to deal with that. So every decade of an individual has a different perspective. And rarely do people have a clear understanding of the business of medicine and when you have to bring a partner in. And there are metrics on how to get bigger so it's cost effective, because you have fixed, you have variable costs, and you have to deal with it. So remaining as you don't have any money to grow, to expand, to invest, and then you rely on demand. Then you have these outside equity firms coming in and going, hey, I'll help you develop an ASC. I'll help you develop ancillaries. I'll help you do, but I got to get something back. The best thing is if you're large enough, you can do that on your own without depending on it. So staying as you are may be difficult in the next 10 years. I congratulate those that can do that, but it may be a problem. Now, you have to capitalize. So credit financing is another way. You're doing great, you're making money, and you go to the bank and say, listen, I'll take out some money. And the bank will say, what do you want the money for? And if you say you want the money because you want to distribute it to your partners, and I see that happen so often. Orthopedic groups that come to me to join the Rothman Institute, when I look into the books, and again, if you understand financial ratios, you'll quickly figure out, were they managed well or were they managed poorly? And then I realized, well, they're not managed well. And I said, well, what was this line of credit here? It was to pay the doctor so he can continue with his lifestyle that he's enjoyed for the last 10 years. That's a bad thing. So if you're going to recapitalize and go to the debt markets, and there's things that they're going to want to know, they're going to come in and you could do a lot of things with a lot of money, but they're going to want to know a few things. They're going to want to know exactly what is going on. And I'll show you this slide right here. They're going to look at your EBITDA. And again, that's something that everyone should learn the definition: earnings before taxes, depreciation, and all that stuff. You have to learn that. That shows you what you're making. You can infer your cash flow from that number. And then they want to look at your debt. They'll do a ratio and say, you're a good customer. If you take money out, make sure you're investing in hiring new people, i.e. new young partners, investing in ancillaries that bring in revenue. But if you take the money out, and I'm not kidding, 80% of the time when I look at the credit lines of groups that want to join me, they took the money out to pay their salary, to pay their second spouse that left them, to pay their mortgages. And that's a big problem because the bankers want their money. They're going to look at, I put this together in April, the interest rates are a lot higher in terms of what you have to pay. They'll do underwriting processes. They'll see. And I remember when we were starting out in 1996, there was only 6 of us at the Rothman Institute. We were paying ourselves $5,000 a month for about 3 years. And what we decided to do was we decided to have a mission. We decided to focus on academics, decided to write papers, and decided to take care of Jefferson. We got a little bit of assistance from Thomas Jefferson University. And then we went to the debt markets and we did take out a loan that we had assigned from Mellon Bank. And my wife was like, they can come after us personally. I go, I know, because there's nothing else to come after. So you got to be very careful getting money from the debt markets. Now, strategic partners. Now, you may not have heard of family office. A family office is just like a wealthy family that's worth billions, and they set up their own investment firm. They have long-term horizons, and you have to look at every type of partnership you have. So a family office, as long as I'm making money, I don't need the money back for 20 years. A strategic partner can be a hospital system. It could be Rutgers. They can come in and say, listen, we like you. We want you to continue to do what you're doing. We will give you X amount of money for service line leadership roles. That's good. You can go to a big healthcare system, a little bit more risky because you have a lot of leverage, and you can fall into the RVU trap with them. Does anyone know what the RVU trap is? I always laugh because they play the same game every time with the doctors. We're going to give you this many RVUs and this multiple, and you're great. Now remember, every 2 or 3 years we're going to bring you in. We're going to look at how you're doing, and then we may modify that. So what they do is just take care of everybody. Don't worry about the insurance background. And then you see us, you take Medicaid, uninsured, and you're really busy, and they call you and they go, listen, you're great. But if you look at your case mix, you're only bringing in some amount of money. So let me bring out my calculator. I'm going to have to drop that value to RVU. But now you're sucked in because it's so hard to get out of the RVU trap. So RVU trap is great, but they usually won't give you a guarantee more than 3 years. Or you can go to private equity. But what does private equity want? Private equity wants a minimum of 12 to 15% return. And that's the first thing I would say to myself. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. There's so little money in medicine. How can someone come in and take that money away from me and I make more money? Because they arbitrage debt. And in reality, I make it really simple. When they come in to buy your practice, they give you a third of the money up front. You have to take out a third of the money on your own credit line to pay yourself. And you have to maintain the interest on that. And then they go to the markets to get the other third that they roll over on the multiple bites of the apple, which means they come in every 3 or 4 years to try to sell you. Sort of complicated, very simple once you learn how to do it. So those are all the different types of partnerships. Now, another big thing in New Jersey, and New Jersey is not a CON state. New York is a certificate of need. You can put up an ASC. Recently, there's stuff in the legislature. I think you need to have a healthcare partner. I don't think you could open up individual. I don't know what the rules are. I heard they're changing recently. But an ambulatory surgical partner makes sense, but they want their piece. We have partners in our ambulatory surgical centers. I will never allow them to have more than 68%, 6-8%. In New Jersey, they're all like 51%. That doesn't make any sense to me because we can manage these facilities better than they can, but we don't have the initial capital to get them going. But with them, they want old distributions to go to the preferred equity providers, which is them. and then what's left over goes to you, and you can make money doing it. It happens. It can work out well. Another one is a relationship. Sorry, I went backwards. Hold on. Another one is a healthcare partnership. Now, I have 5 of those at the Rothman Institute. We have a healthcare partnership with NYU in New York. We have a healthcare partnership with Atlantic Care in New Jersey. We have a healthcare partner with Capital Health, which is south of here. We have with Jefferson. And you sit down with each one of them and say, listen, we're going to provide all these orthopedic services. This is what I need to capitalize. I need you to give me an income guarantee if I bring in 3 new doctors. An income guarantee basically means that if they don't collect enough money, they cover the downside, the floor. If they collect beyond that money, we pay them back the full amount. It's not like they're giving us money. And then there's service line, and it's not like a shared savings program. It's like we help to develop, and that's probably today the safest model. So you're here at this hospital, you sit down, listen, we educate the residents, we do that, they give you money for that. That makes a lot of sense. And they don't really want to own your practice. They want to own you. They're not going to manage your practice. And it's not a bad way of doing it. Now, private equity, and again, I'm so biased, and I apologize, because I was involved in private equity, and it was ugly and evil because I was young. And I don't know if you guys were with me back then. No, none of you guys in this room were there. So what happened was my bosses made the deal. Where am I going? I'm an academic spine surgeon. I'm not going anywhere. And they got all the money, and the money wasn't distributed equally the way, because it should be distributed and correlate with your revenue. It wasn't. The 3 older surgeons took all the money and they gave the rest to little guys. And then for the rest of my life, I had to pay 30% of my salary. And spine surgeons bring in a lot of revenue. And I remember saying to myself, this doesn't make any sense. What is the benefit to me? Now, I'm only 3 years out. And they're like, well, we're going to build ambulatory surgical centers. We're going to, and it never happened. It never happens. So I want everyone to study every single private equity movement in the state of New Jersey. It's Summit, it's ONS Up, it's Hopco. There's 23 private equity movements now, and I'm watching every one of them. And the Harvard Business Review every year does a review. And I'm looking at each surgeon group, and I'm looking at guys right out. I'm looking at guys 10 years out. Did it benefit them? Now, I'm going to show you a slide to tell you exactly where it benefits you. So if you fall somewhere in this slide, it'll benefit. But everyone else, it doesn't make any sense. So the benefit is they give you a ton of money. You arbitrage that money. You pay long-term capital gains. Everything's great. You go home. Don't invest it in the stock market right now. Put it somewhere safe. There's no place safe to put it today, unfortunately. The cons is there's no such thing as income repair. When I meet with the private equity guys, they usually give me the finger and they leave the table. Because I know their game, and I play their game right back at them. I go, oh, income repair. So how are you going to do that? Oh, we're going to get you busy. Oh, that's interesting. I do 20 spine surgeries a week. Do you think I'm God? Do you think I could do 25? I go, so I'm not going to get busier. Oh, we're going to build more ASCs. I go, we have 17 ASCs. We're going to put an ASC. That's not good. I said, you basically, you want my money, don't you? And then the dinner doesn't go well. And then we get up and leave. And that's what usually happens. So the way they make money is they got to make 12 to 15%, and then they got to package you up and they got to sell you again. Now, again, this is just for historical purposes. It went bankrupt. So why is it happening? They just figured out another way of doing the same thing. Back then, they would go public, and they were able to take the fees and the cost of capitalization and arbitrage it over 30 years. It's like taking out a mortgage. But then the tax laws changed, where you had to count revenue concurrent with your debt. So they couldn't arbitrage it. Also, it didn't make any sense anymore. So when they took your money, they had to pay taxes on it. So they couldn't arbitrage the cost while they were getting your cash flow. It's a little complicated if you don't have a business background. So that's why it fell up. So now they've changed all the rules. They're doing the same exact thing, but they're doing multiple bites. If they only own 18%, then they own 30%, then they own 40%. And then because they want to keep on selling it to the next private equity firm that wants to profit off of you. So that's the thing you have to keep in mind. So there's minority positions where they own less than 50%. Now keep in mind, they can't practice medicine, but they really do. So you're sitting around, it's against the law for a non-physician to practice medicine. So they manage your practice, you manage your clinical practice. But in reality, when someone manages your practice, and they decide to cut back on the MAs and the PAs and the office rooms. They're managing medicine. I wouldn't, have the Medicaid patients come in. The uninsured, we just have to just don't answer the phone. They're managing medicine. So I always say, like, the people that look into it, that assess this, it's a joke. And you have a minority position, and then you have a majority position. And once they have a majority position, then they just control. So you guys are getting a flavor of how private equity works. So you're saying to yourself, I'm a young guy. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to work for a hospital. Like, what would I do? What would Alex Vaccaro do today? If I didn't want any headaches, I'd work for a hospital. I know that I'm going to be working for the man. If I had some energy in my soul, if I was interested in business, I'd probably join an orthopedic specialty group, a bunch of orthopedics who are private, see how it goes and play the game. It was 55, I'm getting tired, sell my practice private equity. Because I know I'm walking out the door in 2 years and someone else is going to have to manage the debt. So that's how you have to think and how you do it. So now, private equity, you need volume, you need cash flow. Everything's cash flow to them. You need a growing market. So if you go into a market that's stagnant, like I look at Philadelphia markets, it's a stagnant market. I mean, all the cities are stagnant because you can't grow much bigger than we are. So it's not a good place for private equity. The places that are good for private equity are the young cities, the places where, like we have offices in Orlando. They bring in 300,000 more people a year to Orlando, right, for private equity, because it's a growing market. So as long as that happens, and that's what they look at. So this is the only slide I want you to remember. That's a life cycle of a doctor. You begin with the launch, the growth, the shakeout, maturity. Once your practice has reached maturity and you're not growing anymore, that's when the older surgeon gets out and sells. There'll be a covenant on what he has to do. He has to stick around for 2 years. He's got to see X amount of patients. If his revenue goes down 10%, he's got to have a clawback. But that's when you go out, because that makes sense for you. It makes sense on that curve going up for private equity to walk into your group because they can grow. Now, we were part of a group, and be careful about your revenue getting bigger. We were part of Brielle, and then Brielle broke away, and I'm good friends with the spine surgeons. They're like, wow, we did pretty good. And it was a young spine surgeon, so he was making X amount of dollars. The whole group, after we broke away from the Rothman Institute, was down 17 to 23%, which is a good, but he's up 50% because he was growing. So in his mind, he's growing and he thinks, oh, it's a good thing. But in reality, he would have grown even higher if he had a better business model. So you just have to understand that curve and when to get out. If you're a mature practice, it makes sense to sell. But 80% of you in this room, it does not make any sense to sell. And that was the graph I showed you before. How private equity was great. It was only great because you can arbitrage debt and you can write off the fees and all the capitalization over 30 years until the IRS said you can't do that anymore. And the second they said you couldn't do that anymore, they couldn't show growth and the market collapsed. Okay. So that's what's happening today again. And why is it happening today again? I'll tell you why. Because Wall Street's not stupid. They found a new source of cash flow, and that's orthopedically owned ambulatory surgical centers. All the ancillaries, oh my God. So they jumped into dermatology. They jumped into all the cosmetic plastic surgery, and orthopedic is the last safe bastion. They can't jump into neurosurgery because it's low volume. They're jumping into everything that has developing cash flow, and it's less painful because they're going to skim off the top to get the money. So that's the deal. So it's all surgical and the way they do that. And right now, Hopco has probably spoken to you. Dave Jakoski from Arizona runs it. He comes in, he'll let you determine how much money he gives you, but then you owe the man, 25 to 35% of your income. And this is sort of our experience. I want you to look at this carefully. So I was 2 years into practice and my boss said, we're going to go private equity. So we didn't really have a say. There was approximately 16 of us in the practice at the time. And they said, this is our EBITDA. And when you sell anything, if you sell an ambulatory surgical center, EBITDA shows just how much, what your profit is, how much money you're making before you take out taxes. And they said, listen, we'll pay a multiple on your EBITDA, but you owe us 30% of your salary. So, okay. Now it went bankrupt 3 years later for obvious reasons. First, number one thing is there's no value added. It's just manipulation of cash flow. So they're really not going to do anything. So every time a doctor sits down and tells me, well, they're going to help me do, I go, well, then you were just bad to begin with, because you should be able to help yourself. You do not need a private equity firm to set up an ASC, to set up ancillaries, to manage your back office. You do not need it. You just need common sense. So there's no value added. So the proceeds, the management fee, 30%. Let me tell you something. You're a 45-year-old surgeon and you got a beach house, you got a boat, you got 2 cars, and I take 30% of your money, you're an happy orthopedic surgeon, because you're used to living in that world and you're not going to make it up. And if you're a young surgeon, you're not that unhappy because you never had it before. So the market was hot, the stock was inflated, and they could no longer arbitrage debt. So it collapsed. And that's why it went away. So in conclusion, the world is changing in front of us. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think, because I think we're resetting and recalibrating expectations. My son is going to be a resident, and he doesn't care about the business of medicine. Totally happy living in an apartment on the 4th floor of an apartment building in the bad section of the city. As long as he can go to the bar on Thursday night, as long as he has his girlfriend, he's happy. And then everything will be okay. That side of the table, not happy, because they knew medicine in a different way. So resetting it. And I always say, go into medicine because of the mission of medicine, taking care of people, because it is great. Now, the only thing that gets me angry today in medicine is the fact that we're not protected on social media, that a patient can slander you on social media and you have no defense to it at all. They can lie about you. They can tarnish your reputation, and we're defenseless, and the laws haven't protected you. I'm mad at medical malpractice because it's not justice. It's bad outcome. You can get sued. So I'm mad at that. These are things I'm mad about. I'm really not mad at the fact that they're paying us less, because you just change your lifestyle. And your generation, the younger guys, will be okay with it. My generation will not be okay with it. And that's why we tend to be unhappy. So you have to figure out how it works, and everything will be okay. So those 4 alternatives that I talked about: private practice, a strategic partner, debt markets, or private equity, they all make sense. You do what you're most comfortable with and you're most knowledgeable about. Most of the people in this room will end up joining a hospital system, because as of last week, 77% of you will join a hospital system. No one will go into private practice. Most people will join a large multi-specialty group. And that's just the way it is. And the world will change and the laws will change. We won't be happy. Some people will do well. So I hope I didn't depress anybody. Did I raise your hand if you were depressed by that talk? But that's just the reality of what's going on. So thank you very much. So any questions on healthcare economics? Don't be shy. Yes, Dave?
You're not unhappy about the fact that the doctors say may make less, but the total amount of dollars available hasn't changed. It's gone up. You're telling this group you're not happy, you're happy and okay with the fact that instead of you getting the money, it's going to the CEO, the administrator. There's 20 other people with their hands in the pie that are doing nothing. You're running your own practice. And these people are now, when you say a resident here is going to work for a hospital, all that means is he's going to get a salary, and those other people running it inefficiently are going to get their piece.
That's a great point. So Dave, you're thinking like a business person right now. You're looking at the amount of money. 19.7% of GDP goes to healthcare. Now, most people don't even understand what that means. It doesn't mean like, oh my God, we don't have any money, because healthcare is its own economy. 70% of the economy in Philadelphia is healthcare. You go to Boston, vast majority healthcare. New York City, healthcare, and that gives jobs. That's okay. So you may decide to invest in missile guidance systems. You may decide to invest in war. So what do good people like to invest in? Healthcare, safety, education, housing, food availability. That's what you want to spend your GDP on. Our country spends a lot on war. So why not? So I'm okay with 19. I'm okay with the GDP. Now, legislators will not be okay. So David's point is you have this much money. Why shouldn't the doctors take it home? And I totally agree. That's the business side of medicine. So I stand behind you 100%. If you have that energy in your soul, go for it because it's there to get. What we can't have is laws that prevent the physician from benefiting financially in that situation. So there are, I mean, Obamacare was great because it allowed insurance for all. It denied access for the vast majority because when they had the gold plan, the silver band, you didn't take it. You didn't take the bronze Obama plan because it paid you nothing. So we need the ability to continue to manage our waste. We need Stark 1, Stark 2, Stark 2A modified. But we can't be criminals. We can't defraud. We can't overtreat. We have to decrease variance. So I totally agree with you, Dave. You're 100% correct. But the different generations don't have that energy to look into it. So at the Rothman Institute, I do a mini MBA every week on Tuesday at 5. We give an MBA lecture. So people speak the language. You have to speak the language before you learn business. You have to speak the language first. So it's 1 hour. It's online. You just, if you can't watch it, do it. But you're correct. But it's complicated. That's why most people walk out. Like my son is like, I work for the hospital. I like the salary. He's never gonna get that beach house. He's never, whatever. He's happy.
He already has it.
He's got it from his dad. So so the bottom line is, what are the only 3 things you need for happiness? Does anyone know the 3 things you need for happiness? You need a purpose, you need autonomy, and then the time to master what you have interest in. Autonomy, purpose, and mastering. And then you're happy. So I like being a spine surgeon, but I hate medical malpractice. I hate all that other crap. I hate I hate people giving me rules. Like they just sent me stuff from the university today. I'm like, okay, who's behind this? I got to figure out who is behind these new rules. I have to stop. But now I have power in my university. So I hate all that. But if your life is good, if you're a businessman, I totally agree with you, Dave. You got to protect your interests. Steve, any questions from you?
I was just curious, Alex, what you see looking at healthcare systems, whether it be private equity. I think you made it extremely clear that there's no way that the individual physician is going to turn out okay in investment. I remember when Dick was putting that in and everyone was saying, oh my God, SEM, we're going to show increased value and everyone's going to have a better outcome by us. That's why it's going to be worth more. And that was really just a bunch of nonsense. I guess the question really is, where are the decisions for individual patient healthcare being made? And I think that, certainly we see non-coverage issues, then we see insurance companies. I mean, they're brilliant people. And I think the biggest problem that most of us in the room have is you did well in school, you're smart, and you're doing God's work, and you figure everything's going to work out for you. That's a big mistake, because the people on the other side of the table couldn't really give a half a crap about you, and you are their ride out. And what I guess my question is when you look at innovation and you look at robotics and you look at all of these systems, when does the institution or the insurance company or the organization say, I'm sorry, you can't do that? So in this hospital, we had a similar issue years ago. The hospital said, oh, we're going to drive down the cost. We're only going to allow you to single source. Doesn't matter that it sucks. It's the cheapest thing. You do it. Now, certain people have a temperament which allows for that kind of provision of care. And certain people don't and get a lot of trouble and become extremely frustrated looking at the amount of burnout in physicians and people who are unhappy with their employment or unhappy with their job. And I think really the question is, like you, I love doing surgery. I cannot tolerate someone telling me what to do. And the question is that, okay, you can't make comments about this. You can have Dr. Kirschenbaum give you a lecture on like what's appropriate way to talk to people and what makes sense and what doesn't. But, there's a lot of things that you have to do in the interest of diversity, equity, inclusion. And the hospital doesn't like when they say we hired a chief diversity officer. And my answer was, you don't need to, just hire someone competent and you'll have diversity. They don't really like those kind of statements anymore. And the question is, who's really making the decisions? And how do our residents get to a position where they're not told, hey, this is the hip you're putting in, you've used enough anchors, sorry, cast is, I know you really want to fix that and the outcome's better, but it's really not that much better. So we think a cast is good enough. How do you deal with that?
So number one, at least the question wasn't rambling. But anyway, no, so number one, I agree with you. So what you're basically saying is our generation, and it comes down to, there's certain human heuristics I look at, like people do not like change. So forget medicine. Steve is exactly correct. Before we could operate who we wanted to operate on, we didn't have to go through prior authorization. We could use whatever implant, and now we can't. And why can't we? Because of money. It's all about money and cash flow. So there's a million, each one of those things you talked about, there's many different ways of getting to the same point of savings. Like what I do price shelving at my institution. My institution did the same thing. Because what happens is the American Hospital Association has meetings like we do, and they talk about best practices on how to save money. And they say, okay, go to a single source provider. So then everyone leaves and they come back and they mandate it, which I guess happened here. They came back to my hospital. I'm like, hey, what's the point? You want to cut costs? Well, why don't we just go price shelving, say we're going to pay X amount of money and anyone can play in that space. So then, they'll come back and say, well, it's a lot of inventory to look at. SPD flashing costs a lot of money. We say, listen, it's really not that much. So give Steve the autonomy to do whatever he wants to do. So all the different things that you said, it is, but it's just, there's social movements that the young can adapt well. The old have difficult times like you and I adapting well. Once you get in your mind frame, change is natural. And every day I'm going to be confronted with an emotional tragedy, but that's my new normal. I'm not that upset about it anymore. I'm really not that upset about it, because every day something horrible happens and I roll my eyes and I say, well, how am I going to deal with that? But if I get upset about it like you do, and then you get upset, I totally get it. Epic comes in. You don't want to learn your epic. You don't want to do your epic training. I'm not talking about you personally.
No, I didn't. I said,
No, but I get it. I totally get it. Don't give your password to a resident. It's illegal. I get it. I totally get it. It's tough for us dinosaurs to adapt. You will be right now. You're not a dinosaur. You're like you just got hatched from your egg. It's okay. When you get born into a new reality, this is reality. You're happy. You will become like Steve eventually. So you have to learn how to adapt to your environment, which is difficult to do. But once you learn, and again, I have a whole talk on how to motivate people in today's world, because you just have to study behavioral economics to understand what gets you out of bed and what gets you to go to work every day. And there's so much unfairness. So we have to fight the unfairness. I totally support that. Everything is said, Steve. Yes.
First thing is trying to figure out the one that. Now, my question is, as we move forward with medicine, and we see they're talking about single party payer, social security. That seems like it did get through, and it didn't happen. Country wasn't. Now they're trying. My theory is they're trying all that. Now they're putting this computer system, monitoring of physician hospital systems, codes, medical care. I think that's coming from centralized data. All beyond. The question is, with the way things are going, do you think that this is a power grab on HHS? Now, basically, control medicine.
Yeah. So So big data analytics, deep neural learning systems, AI. That's electronic medical records. When Obama instrumented that, he needed to understand exactly what's going on. And what you do is, if you look at registry data shows you cause and effect. It shows you concurrency, associations, doesn't give you cause and effect. So registry data is great. So they could see trends throughout the country, and then they go back and analyze trends. Why are they doing more joint arthroplasty in the Northeast? And let's look at the outcomes. Let's look at readmissions. Let's look at the process measures. So having a single source repository of information can be very useful. And as you know, the downsides of AI can be very detrimental. Bad data in, because remember, a deep neural learning system doesn't interpret good or bad. It just interprets the data, makes pattern recognitions and so forth. So things are being controlled by the man, and that's why we have to do electronic medical records. I don't think we're going to end up in a single system because we have too many stakeholders. We're a democracy and we're a capitalistic society, and there's too many stakeholders. I mean, if you just look at something simple, they changed the tax laws this year, the IRS, in terms of how you can submit your taxes. And it screwed all the tax preparatory, like Charles Schwab. The IRS met with all these stakeholders and said, listen, we don't want to ruin that side of the economy, so we'll make some exceptions. We have a pretty good system. I study the world's healthcare systems all the time to find out, what does Germany do? Germany has a private system backed by the government. Switzerland has a private practice backed by the government. Japan, they have great systems. Canada's horrible. Single system. You can't go outside the system. You have to wait. Great Britain and France, they have a two-tiered system. You have the private and you have I look at everything. Our system's pretty good, and we just have to decrease variance, waste, fraud, and excessive spending. That's what we have to do. So I think we're going to come into a good place. We're going to go beyond bundle payments, which is really a race to the bottom. We're going to go into population management, and we're going to come to a system where the right patient at the right time by the right place at the right facility gets surgery, and we're going to be bonused on quality outcomes on how people do. That's the perfect system. So when people like me decide to go into politics to push that, that's where it's going to go. A single healthcare system would be a horrible thing for all of us. And Americans will not tolerate it because every time someone says, well, in Europe, they do this, I go, well, we're not Europe. We're so different in so many different ways, our culture and everything else. So I wouldn't be that angry about a single electronic medical records unless the data is used for nefarious reasons. Because it gives us so much information. Because now Watson came out to interpret medicine. Now it was supposed to be a bonanza for tumor care, to see things that we don't see first with our eyes, but it can pick up relationships. Big data can be very useful, I think, in the future. It can be scary, like you said, and it can be misinterpreted and used. And you're right, but it all started from Obama, and it could go in the right direction. So as long as we fight the fight, Oregon just didn't get it passed again. It's going to be the liberal states that are going to pass it because they don't understand where we want to be as Americans. I mean, I have Canadians come down all the time to see me because when you can't go to another provider in Canada, they have a system where you can't go outside the system. Great Britain, you can go to a private practice doctor. There's no outlet. They can get away with it because they're small. In America, can't get away with it. So it's not doomsday. And remember, when I was in college, graduating, I had the same fear that all of us had in this room. I said, I'm going into medicine because I like it, but it's going to be socialized in a few years. That was 1980. It's going to be socialized, and it never got socialized. Steve and I have been friends since 1992. I would always say, we don't have a network. And I would go to my CEO, Mike West, and I brought Mike West up to visit Steve multiple times. And I'd be like, Mike, a network is a reality in New Jersey. We need to go out of network. Oh no, that's going to be gone. He would say to you and I, 1993, that's going to be gone in a year or two. I go, I don't think so. I said, don't use that fear of where the business model is today. So you have to take advantage of what you have in front of you today. And that network is decreasing significantly now, but it's 2022. So the lost opportunity over 24 years, that's bad business. So you have to understand what you have today. We will go in the right direction. We're going to go to a population health method. And people, if I was the president of the United States, I'd guarantee healthcare for all, for preventative medicine, for food, housing, all the social determinants of health. I'd make sure people got cardiac care, pulmonary care, and then I'd have a private insurance on top of that. You want to go see an orthopedic surgeon because you have arthritis, orthopedic markets. So you make a private and a state-run system. So everyone, it's stupid that every American doesn't have health care. I mean, that's ridiculous to me. I mean, let's talk common sense. Everyone should be cared for. There should be no one that can't see a doctor. So everyone should get good health care across America. And that's why I pay 54% taxes. So there's no excuse for the government. And then use the private insurance pool for elective orthopedics, elective ENT, elective neurosurgery. But everything else should be a private system. That's where we're going to end up. Yeah. That,
Their perspective.
yeah, I'll give you my sense in that. Yeah. So it's criminal. Prior authorization is a criminal process. Let me take you back when I became a doctor. We had the HMO gatekeeper. It's old ways of preserving cash flow and controlling the money. Why do banks have your money? Because they make money on your money. They want you to leave your money in the bank. Prior authorization just keeps the money on the insurance side. And they label it and they message it as increased variance, overtreatment, fraud. And that's why we have to be a gatekeeper. So we're fighting to get the gold card. Gold card means they can audit your practice. You do 100 cases, they audit 10% every year. If those cases are appropriate, you don't have to go through prior authorization. That's what I would do. If I was the president, I'd be like, listen, you just have to be audited. You come in, there's no prior authorization, but we're going to just look at 10% of your cases every year. And if we find out that you're injecting 7,000 times, giving 600 fentanyl pills out, then boom, you're done. You're in the prior. You got to make that phone call. Right now, it is so offensive to me that I have to do this because it wastes time. But what's more offensive is I have my PA do it for me. I hate when they say I can't talk to a PA. What's that all about? So now I have to sit down and the person I'm talking about is going off a clinical practice guideline that's really not appropriate because every patient's different. Well, you can't operate on this person with a severe radiculitis because of a disc herniation who can't walk because Aetna says you have to have a motor deficit. That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, this person's screaming it. So that's why the academy has to focus on that. That's the number one thing. But remember, that's today's trick on preserving cash flow. Every 5 years, they have a trick. I mean, and I'm familiar with all the tricks because they come every time I see it, I go, okay, who thought of that? They're just thinking of ways of keeping the money on their side before they give it to you. And who controls the dollar? Okay, do you guys want to hear about cervical trauma or is that boring? Okay, I feel bad for you guys. I never did a two lecture grand round, so let's do it.